Welcome to another critique session on the art tutor, and here we're going to look at a still life composition, and we're going to break it down and analyze it from the point of view of assessing it based on the student's ability to successfully utilize the elements and principles of drawing to make an effective composition. Students are always asked to submit 3 stages of the working process, and here's the stage 1. This is obviously stage 2, and this is the final stage. The problem with what I'm seeing here from looking at the 3 stages at a glance, I am thinking that this here, based on the way the photograph was done, that this is a blue wash. But when I go to this second stage, I'm not getting that sense that it's a blue wash. So when you're taking photographs of your work, you have to be consistent and do not let the photo, do not do any altering or adjusting of the photo, because what that does, as in this case, it makes things confusing for me in terms of assessing what was used. I can tell that this one here deals with the egg ball topic, and we're going to go straight to the final piece. So here's the final piece, and we're looking at the ingredients that would have been used to make egg ball, which is the Guyanese delicacy. So we have the frying pan. We have the frying pan here. Now, looking at this composition, I'm a bit confused about the true color of the paper that is being drawn on, because I want to know if the paper is bluish as it is being shown here right now, or whether this is a result of some amount of photographic editing when the work was done. So that's a concern that I have, and I would appreciate if the student can leave a comment below the video so that could be clarified, because it's important. Okay? Now, comparatively speaking, and I'm going to compare this composition with the first one that was done, which is this one. And these 2 pieces are done by the same student. And if you comparatively speaking, this is a much better composition in terms of the fundamentals of drawing. This is a much better composition. That doesn't mean that there aren't some issues that we're going to address, but it's a much better composition. So that's a plus. This composition is based on the egg ball topic, and I can see that clearly. What I appreciate about this composition is the way the student was able to put together the composition. In a traditional sense, persons tend to have those, this is the cassava, this is the echalot, and this is the egg. Persons tend to have these objects resting on the surface. What this student would have done is to hang these objects on the wall, which makes it interesting. It's an interesting take on a familiar topic. Well, not topic, subject matter. The still life composition, usually when you see stuff with still life that's how it's being done. But one of the things I would have said in an earlier drawing when I assessed the work of this particular student, I would have said to her, I don't want to dissuade you from taking your drawing into that conceptual realm, because it adds a different dynamic, and we can clearly see from here, in terms of composition, in terms of the entire way in which it's presented, it really sets you thinking on a different level, especially when you look at what is happening with the egg, where there seems to be an hole poked in the egg, and things are pouring out into the frying pan. Interesting take on the subject, so that's commendable. But when we look at it from the point of view of the composition, it's an interesting composition. You have this nice diagonal stuff happening there, and then you have the verticals, very strong verticals in terms of the lines from the board, and then straight line from the arm. It's pretty interesting. I'm still seeing again though that uncertainty in terms of shading technique, because here you have one approach in terms of your shading on the walls of the background, but then on the surface you're going with that squiggly kind of stuff, and that's some inconsistency in terms of your shading technique. So you need to pay attention to one shading technique and stick to that. It's going to make your work better. Try it for once and see what happens. You'd appreciate the point I'm making. We can tell that the light is coming from the right side, and you can see that here it's coming from the right side of the composition based on how it's affecting the egg, the eshallot. But with the cassava there's some inconsistency, because I'm seeing a shadow here or a darkness there that's not supposed to be, because if the light is coming from this side, then when you're dealing with a logical representation of a still life composition, the direction of the light, the dark and shadow areas are always opposite the direction of the light. So if the light is coming from the right, in this case, it means that the dark and shadow area is going to be on the left side. So how we get that there, I'm not sure. And because these are suspended from on the wall or the background of the composition, you're not supposed to be having that there. Okay? I'm struggling to identify the colors of the objects in the composition. Now I know the eshallot is going to be a light green. The cassava is brown. The egg, I'm assuming because of the strength of the value, is also a brown egg. But the browns that you will find on eggs, if we were to photocopy the composition, is it going to be the same tonal value as that of the cassava? It's a question that you have to ask. And that's where, again, I'm hoping that from the previous drawing and this drawing, you're going to be able to gather enough information to self-correct along the way. If you look at the strength of the cast shadow on the wall and compare that to the cast shadow on the floor, you have some inconsistencies happening there. I mean, that is really, really strong. But yet still, it's not as close as this. And remember, when we're talking about spatial relationship in a drawing, objects or parts of an object that is closest to you would have the stronger values, whether that value is a light value, a dark value, or a shadow value. And there's nowhere you're supposed to have this part of the cast shadow this dark, but you have it here where it's on the wall, and it's stronger than the part of the object that is closest to you, because this is the closest part of the composition to us, the frying pan. Again, I cannot tell what's the color of the frying pan because of how you use your values. We're able to get away with a little stuff because you introduce a little bit of color to show the yolk of the egg coming out there. But how far is this, the yolk that is pouring out of the egg, from the end of this part of the frying pan? It's in front. But is your value speaking to that in terms of the spatial relationship? And in the construction of your frying pan, you have some problem, because if we look here, you have the top rim, which is an ellipse, and then you're going to have a second ellipse right around here. But when I'm coming in here, you're not giving me no impression as though this ellipse is continuing there. And that's a problem with construction. And that's a basic error that should not be made at this stage. When you're in the construction phase of your composition, and I'm going to go back to see how you'd have addressed that in the construction phase. In the construction phase of your composition, those are things that you're supposed to be paying attention to. But you see, this here is so weak that I'm unable to see it clearly, but I think something up. Yeah, you have it there. You see, here, when you go there, you have that happening. Well, no, not quite. Because if I continue this ellipse here, I'm not seeing anything appearing inside there, and they're supposed to be that line, that ellipse continuing there, because that's the bottom of the frying pan. So you have problems with construction, and that's something that you're going to have to address. In the initial stages of your drawing, pay attention to the nature and the characteristics of the objects that you're drawing. And even in this stage, we see you're struggling with that here. You got to pay attention to construction. Otherwise, your objects are not going to reflect the true nature of, or the true characteristic of that object. One of the characteristics of cylindrical object, and in this case, or spherical or objects, well, you can consider this a cylinder, just that the wider cylinder, the frying pan, is that whatever is above, very often is also below. So if you have an ellipse above, then you need to have an ellipse below, because it is circular or spherical, and it's going to mirror that in order for the frying pan to, and we're not getting that impression here. So you got construction problems. The hand that goes with this frying pan seems to be for a different frying pan because of its size and its proportion. And again, that speaks to the construction. Your egg, your echalot, and your cassava, those are a little more recognizable in terms of how you would have gone about constructing those. I can see you would have worked on creating visual texture. I can see that from the board in the background. I can see that on the cassava, and those are commendable. But the echalot, I think it lacks some amount of that delicate nature that comes with this particular seasoning, and that's something that you need to pay attention to when you're shading. The egg, I'm not sure I'm getting that sense of that delicate nature of the egg. I'm not feeling that based on how you would have shaded. And based on how you have it here, I'm assuming that you have something that is resting in or clamping it to allow it to pour out like that. You have some good ideas, but your lack of proper execution of the fundamentals of drawing is really taken away from the quality of your work. And that's something that I would urge you to spend some extra time looking at. Understand spatial relationship in your still life composition. Foreground, middle ground, background. Wherever those objects fall, the detail is going to be different, and the intensity of the value is going to be different. Objects that are closest to you would have a stronger value, they would have more detail. Objects that are further away from you would not have the same level of detail and the same level of value as used, because they're in a different part. And in this case, what I think most students tend to do is, just because from, let's say, from the rim of this frying pan, from the front rim to the back rim, it's about 6 or 8 inches. And some students tend to think, no, I don't need to represent. No, yeah, you need to represent that. You need to show, based on how you shade, that there's a difference from the distance from the front rim to the back rim. And when you understand how to use values, you're able to deal with those things effectively. When you understand how to use value, you're able to differentiate textural quality. This is metal, but I don't get that sense that it's metal, to be honest, the way it's treated. This is a shell, a delicate shell, but I don't get that sense. With the cassava, do I get that texture and that robustness that comes with the cassava? Yeah, I can feel some amount of that. The echalot, I can feel the stiffness, but still, to me, it lacks that true representation of the color of the shallot, because the light green that's on the shallot is not going to be this. If we were to photocopy the brown of the cassava and the light green of the shallot is going to be lighter, but it seems like everything is the same tonal quality. Look at the background too, the wood. The cassava, the shallot, the egg, these objects, 3 objects are in front of the background. But based on how you would have shaded, I'm not getting that sense, because the light here on that background is strong and it's competing with what is happening on the different parts of the object. If you look at the shallot, if you would have gone and placed some highlights along here, that would have brought it more forward from the background, rather than still having it merging into the background. Some highlights there, some reflective light around here, that would have really allowed you to differentiate that this here is where the actual shell out ends, and what you're seeing here is the cast shadow as a result of the shell out. But we don't get that sense based on how you would have drawn it. So I'm urging you, after you would have finished looking at this video and this critical assessment, go back and take a look at your work, and in some cases go back and make the adjustments in this particular work, and you'll see the difference. Your highlighted areas on this area is going to make a vast difference, because you're going to show that it's going to stand out more, because as it is, it's still blending in too much with the background. A different quality of highlight on this streak of yolk that is coming out of the egg into the frying pan is going to create a difference in terms of showing the spatial relationship between the middle of the frying pan to the back of the frying pan. And in terms of your foreground, which is this part of the composition, look at the strength of your lighted areas opposed to the background. Background is too strong. It's fighting with the foreground, and that's why you're not getting that effective representation of spatial relationship in a composition, because of how you're using your tones. Again, I really like the creative approach that you're taking to the way you're assembling your objects. It's non-traditional, but you cannot forget that when you're drawing and you're shading and you're constructing, you got to pay attention to the fundamentals. Because I can assure you, if you go make those adjustments in terms of tweaking your values to show space, tweaking your values to show the true color of the objects that are a part of the composition, and again, I'm just assuming that the egg is a brown egg because of how dark it was shaded. Make those adjustments and you'll see the difference in the quality of your composition. And please, in future, when you're submitting your work, pay attention to the photographs you're taking, because I am confused as it relates to the true color of the background. Because you see what's happening there? That's black and white. This one got the blue. This one don't. This one got the blue. So now I'm left in doubt as it relates to whether that blue is a true wash on the paper or is just a photographic edit. And you need to pay attention to that, please. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you'll find information here that would allow you to go back, look at your work, self-correct, do some deliberate practice, do some extra research, and improve the quality of your drawing, because you have some very good ideas that can really produce some strong composition, but the strength of your composition is being depleted by the basic errors you're making with the use of your tones and some other fundamentals in drawing.